Μπορούμε να ξεκινήσουμε.
I think it's time for us to begin. So please take your seats. Those of you who would like to participate in this breakout session, which is on culture and education, please take your seats so that we may begin, because we are running a bit late. So in this session, we will try to stick to the time allotted to us. We're going to be brief and succinct.
We are very happy to have you with us today. The topic of our discussion is Culture and Education Transforming Our Future, the case study of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. Now I would like to introduce our esteemed panel, starting from left to right. Mr. Laszlo Jakab Orsos from USA, Director of Penn World Voices Festival.
Hi, everyone.
Ms. Susanne Plaehn from Italy, Head of Fundraising and Marketing at Teatro Comunale di Bologna. Mr. Nate Hill from USA, Assistant Director of Chattanooga Public Library. Mr. Orestis Andreadakis, Artistic Director of Athens International Film Festival. And Ms. Elly Andriopoulou, Chief Operating Officer of SNFCC. Hello. Before we hear what our guests have to say on this subject, I would like to say a few words as an introduction to the topic. I will speak in Greek.
So changes are so rapid that no matter what you say, you already think it's obsolete and outdated, that the present is already history. So in the environment here in Greece with a crisis, time is in fast forward. There's confusion, there's populism, there's ignorance, and a lot of things are presented in a distorted way. So, however, in this environment, we have contribution and creativity, which also seem to be flourishing. This is something we cannot ignore. So the question is, can culture and education transform our future? What will the place of a new opera and a new national library be in a society that has been troubled by the crisis? It's uncertain and there's lack of trust, and it's also disoriented. It's lost its footing. The answer in the Greece of the crisis is complex. I think the answer will be provided by the knowledge worker of the 21st century, a person with many skills, a person who's flexible, a person who adapts easily, a person who believes in lifelong learning. This is the knowledge worker that will be created in the library of the future. It cannot be shaped outside the library, because whatever includes knowledge is not cut off from society. Why is that the case? Because today, since knowledge is available on all devices linked to the internet, what you know are less important than what you can do with what you know. So the ability to find answers to problems in a creative way, or to bring to the fore new abilities and skills such as critical thinking, communication, and collaboration are more important than academic knowledge itself. So let's go back to the main question of our meeting today and of our breakout session. So the question is, how do culture and education transform our lives? When the French President François Mitterrand was asked why he creates large-scale projects, I'm talking about cultural projects in France, he answered, because they enhance our sense of pride and because they also are good for human dignity. In 1982, Mitterrand announced the construction of the biggest and most modern library in the world, which will be on all cognitive subjects. It will be accessible to all, make use of modern technology. There can be distance learning, and it will be connected to all other large European libraries. Since 1996, when the new National Library of France started operating, we had the increase not just in the number of visitors, both physical and electronic, but there was also yet another incentive for one to travel to France. So in 2016 will be the beginning of a new course for Athens when we have the inauguration of the Cultural Center Stavros Niarchos Foundation. But this transformation cannot happen overnight. We know that everybody must know about it. This transformation does not happen overnight. It needs method. You need to penetrate society and you need space. And such a large project, in order for it to take root, you need to have a big heart and you need to be able to engage in creative thinking and criticism. You have to turn time into your ally. Mr. Yannis Trochopoulos, who is director of the Cultural Center Stavros Niarchos Foundation, says that we are joining forces in order for our children to enjoy a national library which will leave its mark on the history of Greece 20 years from now. So we have to say that this thought is realistic, but it's also encouraging because in this country, particularly in this period, we need prospects that are shaped through truth and through reality. So we know that every small step will lead us to the achievement of a common cause. We have to join forces. There mustn't just be empty words. We know that waiting for something is a collective effort, just like conquering things. So now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Elly Andriopoulou. She will talk to us about what will happen, about the efforts and that you already have carried out, how you're trying to create an audience even from now, and what about the sustainability of this very large and very important project. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the podium now. Just one last detail. I'd like to ask you not to speak for more than 5 minutes in your initial presentation so that we can have time for questions, so that we can come back and have a second or even third round. So please be as brief as can be. Thank you. I'm going to speak in English.
And thank you, Mrs. Katsounaki, for the introduction to our topic today. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be here and to present to you and to be the case study of this panel for the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. And I really look forward to your views on what we're about to present, as well as the views of my distinguished fellow panelists. A few basic facts about the SNFCC. Sorry, it's not working. Okay. Okay, here we are. So as most of you may be aware, it will host the new buildings of the National Library of Greece and the Greek National Opera, and it will also have a park of 170,000 square meters, the Stavros Niarchos Park. It is located south of Athens. Most of you had the opportunity to visit it on Wednesday evening and watch the great Dance of the Cranes event. And it is the largest grant of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. The budget for the project is 566 million euro, and it covers the studies, the outfitting, and the construction of the cultural center. Upon its completion, it will be donated to the Greek state. And the center was designed by Renzo Piano Building Workshops and is being built by the joint venture of Imperdilo Terna. This is a view of the SNFCC, an aerial view of how it will look like when it's completed. The pointer can be seen. The large white square is the canopy over the opera building, the energy canopy. Next to it to the right It looks like a park, but it's the green roof of the National Library. And on top of the two, as we see it, is the parking building, which also has a green roof. So as you can see, 85% of the entire site will be covered by the Stavros Niarchos Park. Another view from the northeast, you can see the opera building. To its right is the library building and the water canal. A view of what the National Library will look like. The ground floor is actually currently being redesigned, because once the National Library of Greece moves to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, it will also add a public library to its offering and services. And this public library is being designed according to the latest trends in public libraries, where they're not just a place to go and read or borrow books, but actual community centers. And it will have the spaces such as a children's library, an entrepreneurship center, a media lab, a recording studio, to be able to be that community center. Sorry, I have a slow reaction. This is a view of the Opera House. It's the main auditorium, state-of-the-art, 1,400 seats. And the opera building will also have an experimental stage, a very flexible stage with up to 400 seats, and a ballet school. And all these new facilities will enable the opera to host international productions, co-productions, and really expand on the repertoire that they are currently hosting. And this is a view from the north of the Stavros Niarchos Park. In addition to just being a beautiful place to walk through, we envision that it will have many educational and cultural events going on in its various different spaces throughout the park. Sorry, could you switch my slide? Thank you. So a project of this scale will have immense impact on the society, and I don't think we can even begin to understand the overall impact it will have before its completion. But there are three types of impact we're expecting it to have. First of all, social impact. One of the key themes and key values of this project is accessibility. And this is both physical accessibility, but also social accessibility. So the facilities and infrastructure have been built in a way that are accessible, but we also hope that the programming, with a lot of free educational programming, will remove other barriers to access. With regards to environmental impact, the project is already a model of construction, environmentally responsible construction, and aims to achieve the LEED Platinum certification, which is the highest level of certification for environmental sustainability. The economic impact, sorry, previous slide still, thank you. The economic impact is something we're already starting to witness, and it has been especially important in the Greece of today throughout this crisis. According to BCG's study of 2010, the construction will create an economic stimulus of 1 billion euro and will create up to 2,400 jobs related to the project. And once it starts operating, then it is expected that the economic contribution will be another 160 million a year. One back? Thank you. So a project of this scale, which is built for the Greek people and is donated to the Greek state, can only be implemented successfully through a public-private partnership. And in this partnership, you know, the private sector, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation brings the investment and brings the expertise, but then it is only the state that can carry this through and create the social and lasting impact that one would hope with this. So the foundation, as I mentioned, is paying for the construction and all related equipment and studies. It is also creating an organization. The SNFCC SA, upon delivery, will take over the facility management for the entire complex, will be responsible for the park, and will do programming and events in all the public spaces. Additionally, and this is not related is not part of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center grant, but as part of its grant-making activities, the foundation is also offering grants to the library and the opera to enable them to build their audiences and to prepare for the services and programs they want to offer in the new facilities. On the other hand, the state is providing the land for the construction of the SNFCC. It is funding and staffing the 2 national organizations. This is the case today and will continue to be the case once they move to the new facilities. And following the completion of the project, they will also take ownership of this SNFCC SA umbrella organization and be responsible for its funding and operation. We believe that a project of this magnitude needs many success factors in order to come together at the end. Facilities need to be inviting and they need to be functional. And we really believe that with Renzo Piano as an architect and the multitude of consultants who have worked on this project, we're okay with the facilities. The next really important element is programs and events, and this is for all spaces and by all organizations that will be situated in the cultural center. Programs and events is the only way to turn visitors, people who just come to see the architectural marvel, to patrons, and that will be key to the success of the cultural center. Finally, we are working on creating a very high quality visitor experience, from parking to ticketing to restaurants. All this is part of the success. And these 3 first elements are something, if we get them right, would secure the visitors, but the project could still not succeed if we don't get the operating model right. And that is key to sustainability, both on the expense side and on the revenue side. And let me talk a little bit more about that. So in terms of the infrastructure, and there were related questions this morning too on sustainability, what the foundation has tried to do is to create the absolute best standards and prerequisites to ensure the environmental and operational sustainability of the center. So for example, part of the project is creating an energy canopy of 10,000 square meters, which will cover the majority of the energy needs of the cultural center. The park irrigation system and the gray water system basically ensure that we won't need to to draw from the drinking water public system for the needs of the cultural center. And of course, elements such as the green roof, the trees and plants, the canal, they create a microclimate, they reduce the temperature both inside and outside the buildings. So this has a real impact both on the environment, but also on the future needs of the cultural center for its operation. Now on the funding side, this is a state-owned organization. It will be state-owned. So the majority of the funding will come from the state, but we shouldn't just rely on the state. Again, it was analyzed quite a bit in the previous panel. There are many EU programs for cultural and educational activities, and that's something that we're preparing to be able to absorb. We are building fundraising capacity, and we will also have revenues from the services offered to the public, such as parking, restaurants, cafes, and of course, ticketing from events. With regards to pre-opening engagement, and Ms. Katsounaki asked that during her introduction, just because we build it, it doesn't mean that people will just come. It's important to, in addition to setting operating models and talking about processes and sustainabilities, this is for the people. And it's really important to win the hearts and minds of everyone before we even open the cultural center. So there are 2 ways that we've already started doing that. One is we've created a visitor center right next to the construction site with a great view to the site where people can come and see the progress of the construction works, but they can also experience just a small taste of what we hope they'll experience in the cultural center through educational and cultural programs. At the same time, not everyone can come to us, so we are going to them through a program called the Journey to the SNFCC, where in collaboration with our key future partners, the opera, the library, and WWF, we are going to municipalities for the time being around Attica. It will be expanded to other areas in Greece. And we are creating awareness about the cultural center and again, providing a taste of what this will offer in the future with free Don Giovanni opera performances, with film workshops, digital film workshops in the local municipal libraries and activities in the local parks. Let me just close by showing you, last slide please. Yes, this is one of the original sketches of Renzo Piano. As you can see the hill of the park where we were on Wednesday night and the canopy over the opera. This is his writing on top, and he called this place topos, which is the Greek word for place. On Wednesday night, he talked about the energy and the joy and the optimism that Wednesday's event brought to the place. And we hope that this energy, optimism, and joy will continue to be there once the SNFCC opens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Andriopoulou, for your very comprehensive presentation of what will be created, which is such a large project. And of course, in order for you to be able to present all this in such a short space of time, there needed to be discipline. And I'd now like to give the floor to Mr. Orsos, who knows very well what it means to deal with literature at a time when people surf on the internet. And in New York, he's been managing a literary festival which has already been in existence for 10 years.
We could show the film, what we tried to figure out. Can we show the short video about the festival? I'm running a international literary festival in New York, and the last minute I said that it would be nice to look into this film. It's a 5-minute film, but we're gonna just interrupt it, just giving you the taste of the festival. So let's start it, and we're gonna just interrupt it at one point, okay?
When we first dreamed up this thing, we really had no idea how people would respond. It exceeded our wildest dreams.
I'm very excited. I was stunned by the turnout. When we got out of the taxi on the corner of 43rd Street and the line was snaking around the block, this is for literature.
New York is a city which has international festivals of everything, and it seemed nuts that there wasn't an international literary festival.
I mean, the city seems to be absolutely buzzing with Penn World Voices.
I think it's pretty incredible that poetry is still alive. Don't you? Well,
I sweep through city streets, my wings outstretched.
If you lived in a conflict situation.
We were feeling that there was a kind of breakdown in communication between the United States and the rest of the world, and that at least at the level of art, the level of literature and ideas, we could do something to restart that conversation, to allow American voices to be in dialogue with world voices.
The people of New York have so obviously shown that this is a festival that they want to happen. And it's wonderful to see that, in the immortal words of Kevin Costner, if you build it, they will come.
The Penn World Voices Festival of International Literature starts tonight here in New York. It's the only gathering that celebrates international literature in the United States, and it features 150 writers from 40 countries in over 50 events.
In the program, I count writers and translators working in Arabic, Asante Tree, Basque, Catalan, Chinese, Danish, Dutch, German, Greek, Hebrew, Italian.
Some of the most articulate, most inspiring writers on the planet.
In America, it's not true that...
I came in from Los Angeles. It's been inspiring and wonderful.
My head is burning.
It's the big names, man. Gotta see them.
You obviously have to have, the best-known names. But we've always tried to find hot young writers and try and introduce them to an American readership. Sometimes writers will come here and speak, and as a result of that, they leave with publishers.
Hi, I'm Zadie Smith.
So just to give you a taste of this festival, this is nothing less and nothing more than an international literary festival. There are more and more international festivals popping up around the world. There are at least, of my knowledge, there are at least 10, 12 major international literary festivals from Berlin to Shanghai to Melbourne. What really differentiates us, New York, is the, I think, fairly unique political agenda. This is the only literary festival which speaks and embraces and projects political mission and political notion. This is a festival which adamantly and obsessively tries to look at society through the lens of art, not just literature, through art. We're representing freedom of expression, First Amendment rights, and we're representing lots of writers and artists who are currently in prison or whose freedom is curtailed. So it's an edgy content. It's not easy to sell it to a larger public. So this is our biggest mission, to frame it and to sell it so people can relate to it. It's not entertainment in a kind of like the first-hand notion. It is not. It's actually work. So we want people to come to our festival and be inspired. So we're dealing with issues like prison system in America and the world. We're doing workshops with cab drivers of New York, the nannies and the house cleaners. We're doing immigrant workers workshops. While we are doing Salman Rushdie and Paul Auster, all the major names. We have big readings and kind of like traditional literary readings, but we also have out-of-the-box programming. And I have to say that out-of-the-box, kind of unusual programming is what really constitutes what we are. So this is our identity. So we do an obsession series late at night when we ask writers and philosophers from all over the world to come on stage and talk about, late at night, talk about one idea which doesn't let them sleep. And then we pair them with a shrink, with a psychiatrist, and then the audience joins. And people love it. And part of our mission is to actually bring in and embrace a different and larger audience. Of course, the younger people, that's a given. But also different kind of constituencies who wouldn't normally come to a literary festival. Because these names, as much as they are tempting, they can be actually frightening. So my aim with the new concept, or newish concept of the festival, to really show that literature is way more than just the bound published book. And I have the feeling that Nate's going to talk about this, kind of like the similar notion. So what we actually heard yesterday, I think one of the presentations, I've heard that what we really have to, when we face with issues like unemployment, what we really want to do, what to kind of like project, is really how to embrace and take risks, how to speak to situations like unemployment. What we're trying to do with art, with literature, and through the lens of art, we actually try to trigger these questions and try to emphasize that art and literature is subversive. We really want to understand that that's why we are doing it. Good literature, good art is always facing the uncomfortable, is unsettling. If you be able to talk to that, and if you actually are able to embrace this, then you may very well going to be able to answer or question some of the most burning issues of your own life. That's what we learn from art and literature. So that's why we are doing this festival, and that's why we love to do this festival, because every year we could see the projects and the changes, but this nothing, six days festival triggers. So I see projects all over, not only in New York, but internationally too. It's part of the reasons why we are here, why I am here, because I hope at one point we're going to be able to work with the library here, bringing the same component. Not elegant, not just elegant, fancy events, but subversive and really unsettling events, which hopefully going to travel well here. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Laszlo. Και τώρα η κυρία Plaehn.
And now the floor goes to Mrs. Plaehn, who knows very well what it means to try to find resources for cultural events in an era when the state is not present, sponsors are not there, and the people do not go out very easily.
Okay.
Should I go?
Okay. Of course.
Distinguished guests, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, and my amazing experienced colleagues with Maria Katsounaki. I am going to make it very short, and I want just to give you a little antipasta of opera. I know you can count down for lunch. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the Greek National Opera and the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for this fantastic opportunity to come and talk on very important issues for future growth and the impact in many, many fields of economic and youth growth and new ways of looking at opera in the future and the culture. We have to cut down very much, and I'm going to take very little time. I have a very long speech on cultural economics, but I want you to come back in the Opera House. Thank you to Myron Michaelidis, who is the conductor, who led us through a fantastic, extraordinary interpretation with a wonderful, top-quality orchestra of the Greek National Opera for my first experience at all of Crane ballets, and I was really very much taken by it. So let me just tell you this. I have an experience, 30 years in, let's say, live performing arts and most aspect of the business in live performing arts. I'm an opera singer myself. I have a master's degree and I have a university degree, plus I'm a specialist in cultural economics and new modern fundraising methods. Said that, I want to say that I'm absolutely sure that the experience we have done in Italy and the experience and the shared knowledge that we have of the Opera Europa will absolutely be a beneficial knowledge and tool for the Greek National Opera. Opera Europa is 140 opera houses through Europe, and we are really much changing the way that we look at opera and the way that others look at how we run opera houses and the efforts we do to get audience, new audience and different target and segments into the opera house. So Cope Tobin, who is a fantastic Irish poet and writer, he said that opera is the nerve of Europe. And when I thought about what could I give your master listener in order for you to come back and tell what is opera about, is that I would like to talk a little about, I would like to start with Martin Luther King. King, he didn't say, I have a plan. He said, I have a dream. And the ability to take this dream into concrete and active actions will be the driver of the future, will be the way that you can gain the good perspective of the, let's say, shared goals and the set goals for the Greek National Opera and the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. You have to take it to the world. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's a very important sign in this moment of crisis. Fact leads to conclusion, and emotions leads to action, was said by a very famous fundraiser. Opera produces GDP of 1.47%. It engaged like 6,000 people around Europe. I don't know what it's on the worldwide statistic. So it's an absolutely change into, we sustain it from an investment point of view. The Greek National Opera, under the guidance of Maestro Michaelidis and its fantastic musician and orchestra, will absolutely be able to deliver a fantastic success. It's about artistic level, it's about gaining the leader position on let's say artistic level, and also the way you run an opera house out from a modern perspective. That will be the challenge for you in the future. The Crane Ballet is already around, swimming in the internet, and I had some very nice and fantastic comments from people around the world, and of course they highly compliment this fantastic, let's say, first step to give a musical, let's say, shadow of the new opera house and of the cultural center. To be seen as an organization, donors will choose for impact investment. It's very important when you fundraise for culture that you really see all the new opportunities, that you create an audience building and training, and that you create this nice to have and need to have needs of the cultural life for performing arts and education. You have to create very good partnership. You have to encounter your donors in the life of the Opera House. You have to, sell the benefits, not the features of this new Opera House. I would like to just end before someone of you after. I'm available to take question on cultural economics and how do we have created this very, very strong GDP. Just let me add a little parenthesis to the 2.7% of the GDP production of the so-called cultural creative industries from the European community. A very good colleague and friend of mine, Sneska, is sitting down there. We did one work for 1 year together with Barroso on creating a new narrative for Europe, just starting from the artists and the creative minds around Europe to give Europe a new narrative, and that was highly inspiration. After this, I'm able to take questions and you can just come forward. So let me just end that the Greek National Opera will give the world's best show, and I'm sure that Lorenzo Piano, his attempt in the leaflet, he said to make a more beautiful place than what he found. And what Stavros Niarchos says is that we owe it to the future generation and to our children. And the running of the cultural center is the best news of, let's say, of the future we could ever give. So thank you from my point of view.
Thank you, Susanne.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Plaehn. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Nate Hill, who actually took a library which was totally outdated, but together with his colleagues, he was able to breathe new life into it. So please tell us what makes this fourth floor of the Chattanooga Public Library so unique. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for having me, and this has just been a complete inspiration listening to everybody else and everything they've had to say. I'm just delighted to be here. How many of you know where Chattanooga, Tennessee is? All right, that's pretty good. We're a mid-sized southeastern city in the US, and indeed, about 2 years ago, I moved to Chattanooga to start prototyping the library of the future. And it may seem like that's sort of an unlikely choice. I had been working in libraries in New York City and in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I was used to these very, very big places. But Chattanooga is a very special city. We actually have a gigabit fiber network underneath our entire city that is publicly owned. So we actually have some of the fastest internet speeds in our entire country. So when I'm thinking about the future of the public library, that seemed like it was a pretty good place to go. The other really desirable thing, and it doesn't sound desirable at first, but the other really desirable thing was that the library system was completely broken. It had been assessed as just being truly terrible. Sometimes when something is really very broken, it makes it that much easier to fix it. In a sense, anything you do, there's no way to fail, right? You always can go up from there. So this was a really interesting place to go and work. Our main building, and that's where this fourth floor that I'm going to talk about is, it's 4 different floors, each of which is about between 12 and 14,000 square feet. So it's very, very big. And it had been built in 1976. So it has that kind of old concrete brutalist architecture going for it. It's not a beautiful place. It really isn't. I mean, if you get into that kind of architecture, I think you can find it fun. But as I'm describing these new services and what we're up to, I need you to understand that this isn't like the incredible design opportunity that you have here at the Cultural Center to do all of this properly from scratch. So I was excited to move to Chattanooga because the 4th floor of this library had actually never been a public space. For the 30 years, it had been just collecting garbage. People had been moving all of the old furniture up there. It was a giant storage space. What an excellent opportunity to start thinking about what to do in the future. So I would like to present to all of you, well, I'll state something incredibly obvious, first of all. The internet is just been the greatest global disruptor ever, right? And what that's done for public libraries, people think that the disruption is through simple problems like, well, not problems, actually opportunities, like Google coming along. And now people can get the answers to their questions very easily online, right? Actually, what's happened with the internet is that we've really moved from this sort of read-only culture to a read-write culture. It's just as easy for any of you out there now to go and write and publish and distribute media of all sorts. So we don't have these long chains of production that we did in the past. When you think of Encyclopedia Britannica, something that would iterate once every year, now all of you can be out there editing a Wikipedia article while we're talking. And so we're iterating much, much more quickly. And so what this means is that there's this new kind of inequity, an inequity in the access to tools to create and to change things. And so this is really what has informed a lot of the services that we've designed in Chattanooga. Essentially what we're doing is we're moving away from this 20th century model where the library is a warehouse full of content just for consumption, but moving into this new paradigm where we use the library as a place to produce new culture. And so that looks very different. That looks very different for our staff and how we staff the building. Everything about it is new. So I did, for those of you who use Twitter, I tweeted a link to photos of this space, which I think will help you understand. Somebody said yesterday that government doesn't have the ability to have as much research and development going on in their work. And I would say that one of the things that's very special in Chattanooga is that we put a lot of energy toward research and development. Our entire 4th floor is a place where we beta test new services, things that we plan to roll out across the entire system. So at the same time that the public is in getting access to all kinds of sort of specialized computing tools, 3D printers, laser cutters, all kinds of exciting equipment that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, we're also in there developing right alongside the public what our new services are going to be. So it makes it very easy for us to be agile and to iterate quickly. The other really important thing, and I want to make sure I don't run long here, but the other very important thing about how we work is that we recognize that the Library of the Future is this community platform. That there's no way that we can house all of the expertise and knowledge that our community has within the library. And this is, again, very different. This notion of completeness, that a library might be able to have everything, is just preposterous these days, right? There's no way that things can work that way. And so we celebrate the fact that, that knowledge is distributed throughout our community, and people can come in and collaborate with us and partner with us so that they can become smarter and so that they can make the rest of the community smarter. So almost nothing that we do on the 4th floor do we do alone. There's also been a lot of talk about startup accelerators and incubators of sorts in the past couple of days. And I would say that our local startup accelerator is one of our greatest partners. In many ways, we thought of the library when we were flipping things around because we were just so far behind, we needed to move quickly. But now we actually partner with them, and we're sort of a public path toward entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can actually be sort of a snooty pursuit, right? Not everybody truly has access to this. And when somebody said yesterday that that there aren't enough fundable projects. There might be funds. We think of the library as a great sort of fail space where you can come and you can try things over and over again until you get to that potentially fundable project. So we really create this equitable path towards some of the other resources that are around the community. Anyways, I can talk about this for hours and hours, and I will not do that to all of you right now. I hope that you'll have some great questions for me, and thank you again so much.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τον κύριο Neithiel και
Thank you very much, Mr. Neithiel. And now I give the floor to Mr. Andreadakis. He will speak about a cinema festival celebrating its 20 years. There are tens of thousands young people who are very good fans of this festival, which is expanding, isn't it, Mr. Andreadakis? Hello, on behalf of the company Pegasus and the International Festival of Cinema of Athens, good afternoon. There is something that we've been thinking of in the last years during the crisis. What is the benefit of our efforts in this era? What is the contributory benefit? What can we offer to the state and private sponsors in order to gain their support? These things should have been given. But what do we need to offer in return? This contributory benefit can actually address those who take up private or public support. The ancient Greek state had found a way to support civilization and culture. There was a very strict law which obliged rich people to become sponsors for cultural events, and they had no way to avoid sponsoring. What would they gain in return? As sponsors, they were allowed, if they won the competition, to have a banner. However, a banner at the time was a tripod with their name, which was placed in the central street of Athens. Please have a walk to the streets of Athens, and you will have a view of a banner like that, the Lysistrate banner, dating back to 334 BC. You will read that Lysistratus was the one who won the competition, and so on and so forth in ancient Greek. So Lysistratus, a son of Lysithos, sponsored the event that won the competition. Then there are the names of the musicians and the name of the person who was the archon of the era. So we had honor for the sponsor, for the archon, and for the artists. In Athens, our festival is built upon this rationale. We are creating the appropriate climate for the state, the society, and the sponsors. We are trying to provoke a series of changes and alter the way we organize our events and the time of our events. We actually have 12 days of films in September, 120 films, some short films, independent cinema. And this is with the support with NSRF and the Greek Telecommunications Organization. But we are trying to break up this event into smaller ones and increase the events that will attract different sponsors. In this way, funding will return to the society through philanthropy. We wanted to promote our sponsors with our own banners. So a festival, a cinema festival of 12 days, cannot be dealt with as a closed event. It has to be an opportunity to have new scenarios and an opportunity to investigate opportunities for new partnerships. We hope that we will have the support of European programs, and we will have the opportunity to allow foreign producers to support Greek productions or film their own films in Greece. So in the era of downloading, we cannot be allowed to think that the only way to project a film is the cinema. So we're going out in the streets, and we have created the Athens Open Air Cinema Festival. And we have films shown in the open air out in Athens, in parks, in open-air cinemas. And all these films are shown for free. This is how we give back part of the support we get. It's a unique experience to see the film Zelig by Woody Allen in the courtyard of the Byzantine Museum. This is how we attracted the interest of the National Tourism Organization. They support us because we have created the appropriate environment for tourists to come to Athens. And at the same time, we actually promote the commercial, let's say, part of the commercial activities of the area where this festival takes place. And the coffee shops in the area where we showed the films last year said that they had the biggest turnover in the year during our festival. A few days ago, the owner of a cinema told us that during the open-air festival, the bar of his cinema had an increase in its turnover by 800%. So, apart from this open-air festival, we also have another event which will last 4 years. And our effort is even for a duration of 12 months because we will be able to offer the schools the opportunity to play a game with the cinemas. And this is also supported by the Greek Center for Cinema. The Cinema Festival of Athens follows the following principle. Whatever does not become bigger, it will become smaller. So we cannot allow culture to become smaller in the era of crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andreadakis, for this very lively presentation. So in order for Mr. Orso not to miss his plane, he's already missed one flight. We don't want him to miss a second one. So I will limit myself to the questions I have. I'm going to ask some questions to each panelist. So let me start from you, Mr. Orso, so that you can catch your plane. My question is, your festival. Okay. Your festival, the festival which you direct, does it have its own audience? Is it the literary audience? Do you only have a literary audience, or in the 10 years of operation? Because I think you celebrated 10 years of operation this year, right? So have you increased your audience? And if so, how did you achieve that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Since our incentive is so that we're trying to redefine what literature is, it automatically brings up the issue of redefining our audience. So we don't really want to speak to the literati per se. It's a kind of, we know that audience. It can be boring, it's predictable, it's a good, really kind of affluent audience. We don't really need those people. They will come. So what the real work is to expand, but while we are doing it, and this is the biggest challenge, not to dilute the content. So not to sell our souls, you know, marketing and PR-wise, and shake our asses, sorry for my French, but to attract bigger audiences. No, the idea is really to appreciate and understand a larger constituents, what people can actually recognize in art, in literature, how we can actually, what should we address in politics, in everyday life, in even philosophy, journalism, how we can actually communicate. So that's a new discourse. And I'm actually happy to report that our audience is growing. Right now we have between 15,000 and 20,000 in a year. And for a kind of like an intricate subject of literature and philosophy, freedom of speech, it's not a small number. And we see a totally different audience. Of course, younger audience too, and this is a huge achievement. But what I felt this year, we just wrapped up our festival months ago, I really felt that the rooms were charged, right? They really were connected, and the questions are changing. You know the audience questions, we're probably going to have some. So sometimes the audience questions can be tricky and challenging, but it's another way to, we're actually trying to curate the questions. We're trying to suggest themes which then can trigger different types of questions rather than just, when did you come up with this idea, J.K. Rowling? No, I mean, why don't we ask J.K. Rowling why she thinks that the word doesn't recognize the writer in her, some part of the word, the affluent literati word. So that's a shaky question, and that question came from the audience. I was really proud for that.
Thank you very much. Leon,
So I think it would be good to take advantage of the presence of Susan on this panel, of Susanne. So we want to take advantage of your knowledge and specialty. So my question is, if there were 5 things that you could propose, 5 steps to Laszlo and Nate about their job. So if there were 5 things that you could tell them, what would that be? So what would you propose to them? Thank you.
Okay, I speak English, is that okay? Well, I have prepared a lot of steps to take for opera, but so this is really appealing to my creative perspective of life and things. I think that when you need to, they're very different, I mean, you took me by surprise, but 2 different, absolutely different issues and so on. One is very much library and getting out and doing new things and using the technologies and creating everything here, let it happen here, where Laszlo has a more, they have the icons, they have the stars. Oh, sorry. They have the stars, they have people coming in to look at the giraffe, I think, to pull people in there, because of course it's always interesting to see these names, these people. They are really original and they are trendsetter, they're fantastic. Well, my fundraising is a technique. It's a research-based technique. I mean, if we are talking about the ideas that I should give out to fundraising, I think what is absolutely important is to stop resilience, to stop complacency, create a sense of urgency, really see what is necessary today, wake up every day and say, what can I do to achieve a goal, to get young people in, to build an audience, to boost cultural tourism, like we did in Bologna, 8% growth, and which I'm sure this big idea of the new cultural center will be able to gain into also Athens. And I think that what is very important is, Laszlo said it and you said it, each of your own way, to stop this target segmentation and say culture is for everyone. Opera is for everyone. High-profile literary speeches. By the way, I'm very good friends of Umberto Eco, because he teaches just next door where I'm living. And so I think this is very important to say that if you have an education, if you have a population nurtured by culture and by music and by opera and beautiness, you will have a much better achievement in the society. One of the things that I wanted to point out, there was before sort of, would you think that the state should take care of and so on? And a lot of, I mean, I have two passports, Danish and the Italian one. And in Denmark, we pay 65% of taxes. So I would say, of course, the state. Other places, they don't do like that. So, I mean, I would say, well, of course, it is the state, but I need to be, as an individual responsible for the welfare system and all these things. But again, I think that creativity is, you can't put it in economic perspective, because it has always been there. It is the driver of everything in our society. This is what makes new aspect, new ideas, new, it's a part of the human being DNA. It's a part of everything that this thing is very, very difficult. So I really want to get back to, you have to be passionate about making the dream work, giving it feet to go on and make it growth. And then, of course, put the up-to-date knowledge and management method into this, just to keep it short.
Thank you very much, Susanne. Νομίζω ότι το ίδιο, Susanne,
I think, Susanne, that the same goes for the National Opera. I think the same goes for the National Opera in Greece.
Well, let's say that that's a little different, because opera is such a, it has such an impact in society. It starts when the little child or the young girl or boy ask the mother or the teacher to play an instrument or to sing. So it depends. It's very much important that the impact, of course, comes from the return of every facet in the society, from education, from training, the possibility that there is a house where you can do this music. It is, let's say, the ultimate, most, when I call it the best show in the world, it really is. It really takes an amazing effort. It is so... But the same thing about philosophy and writers and filmmakers. I mean, you really need to be a professional and know your job in order to be able to stay there. Opera needs a conductor, opera needs an orchestra, opera needs a choir, opera needs session work, rehearsal, needs the most fantastic singers, the best conductors of stage conductors, and in order to create the illusion, the emotion. And I think that Comtobin's speech on opera as the nerve of Europe is extraordinary, because when you think about, now we're in Greece, and I come from another very peace-loving country like Italy, but Ireland absolutely had tanks running around the streets with a confidential number, and opera was a way of making it possible to survive also. So I think that one of the things is very important also to look at the collective experience together in a room, live performing arts, besides all the very important, let's say, psychological and even physical factors that live performing arts gives you, which is a little more in the quantum physics, like the vibration and how do you feel and so on. So it's a very productive in all sense to have a well-functioning and well-prepared and up-to-standard opera house. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Susanne. And now I would like to ask you, Nate, is library still the right word for what you are creating in Chattanooga?
Yes, I would say that it is. Though it's easy to get caught up in the words. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when I look at the U.S., we have 9,000 public libraries around our country. I mean, that's an incredible infrastructure. It's just under 9,000. And when I look at the way that the world has changed and what people need to learn and do now, it would be crazy not to use that infrastructure appropriately. I think that we've been sort of stuck in this notion that libraries are about books and reading, which I love dearly, and I'm not trying to get rid of the books, but you have to understand that the libraries are really they're about shared resources at the root, and they're about learning. And reading and books are just one implementation of that. And we get stuck on that because that's been the knowledge transfer medium for a very, very long time now. But it's just, things have changed greatly. And so we need to get back to the core and stop focusing on the formats and focus more on the learning itself.
Thank you very much, Nate.
Orestis, I'd like to ask you a question on sponsorship, meaning who are your sponsors? You talked about the Center for Film, the Film Center, and the NSRF, money from the European Union. Is that sufficient? Is that enough? No, you have to go out and find private sponsors. We have quite a few private sponsors. We're talking about beverages, alcoholic beverages, car manufacturers, telecoms, and so on and so forth. The question is, how do you pick your sponsors, and what banner do you allow them to put up? Meaning you have to pick the sponsor the way you pick the artists you will work with, the films you'll show, and so on and so forth. Meaning you cannot allow a sponsor to ruin your festival. But sometimes sponsors just want to promote their products. They want to advertise their products and reap the benefits. So you have to take them by the hand. You have to help them create a banner like the Lysikrates banner. Or they have to find the right way to link your festival, your event, with their product. It's what the Athens Opera did. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Michalilidis and Vasilis Louras from the National Opera, the Greek National Opera, for the wonderful thing they did. They had this wonderful sponsorship with Aegean, and I was envious. I was green with envy. I think we need to see what they did and try to follow that. So there was a sponsorship with an airline, and in order to advertise it, when there was a flight from Athens to Thessaloniki, they started listening to the opera of Traviata. So there were two people, two singers, one soprano and a tenor, and they sang the aria during the flight. This was wonderful. It went viral on the internet, and there was a perfect combination of Aegean. Everybody wants to fly Aegean now because they think that it's an art-loving airline. And this was a wonderful sponsorship for the National Opera. This is a wonderful example. Thank you, Orestis. Mrs. Andriopoulou. Mrs. Andriopoulou, in order for us to wrap up the discussion, you're the final speaker. So if you can choose, do you want to talk more about public-private partnerships? And then you can continue along the lines of what Orestis said, or you could talk about the audience, because it's very important to think about the audience, because we're talking about a very large project, but you need people to fill up the Building, well, the audience, that's a very important subject. As I mentioned at the end of my presentation, we've been working on building the audience. This is something we've been doing from now, and I heard some wonderful ideas expressed by the previous speakers, especially the literary festival was really interesting. I really liked that because what we saw is this is a festival where you normally don't have the audience you would normally expect. So I think we have to build the audience. And I know it sounds rather technocratic to talk about building an audience, but I think it's very important for you to give the opportunity to experience something. So the audience has to know what it will experience. And sometimes it's difficult in our case. So actually, we have to inform the public before the project is complete. And since it's not yet complete, the audience must participate in the dream and the vision, our vision for this project. And the only way to do this is for it to be able to understand what experience or part of the experience that we will offer them in the future. Now, you talked about public-private partnerships. Now, as far as public-private partnerships are concerned, so what I mentioned are obligations. That's the formal part. But in order for this to work in practice, you need collaboration. And nothing can be properly implemented without synergies and without collaboration. So this is done informally, but also formally. So there's a legal framework. There's a law which was recently voted by the Greek Parliament, which says how we do business together, how we cooperate. But there are also monthly meetings with all the representatives of the stakeholders. We're talking about the ministries, the Prime Minister's office, the mayor, and also the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. In these meetings, we talk about everything that is of interest to us, any problems that may have arisen in order for us to be able to resolve any issues. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the breakout session. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for listening. I'd like to summarize with 3 words: community, collectivity, passion. And I would like to thank the speakers. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the audience. I'd like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for giving us this opportunity. And we do sincerely hope that you will convey this message to the others, i.e. that the future is already here. Thank you very much.